The Elder Scrolls Online Update 46 has officially arrived for PC players, and I've done pretty much nothing but play ESO for the past few days, both on and off stream. I figured I'd take just a few moments of your time to give you my thoughts and opinions about this update from my very healer-centric perspective. While I'd say this does lean a little more on the opinionated side rather than the educational one, there were some things that I didn't get to talk about in my PTS video that I'm going to cover pretty in-depth in this video. So my name's Doc, and let's talk about it. Let's start by talking about the most important stuff, the new content. In Season of the Worm Cult, we've traveled to Solstice, a small island found south of Murkmire, to investigate the resurgence of the Worm Cult. These guys, led by the infamous necromancer Mannimarco, were the main antagonist of the base game questline. Now that I've played through the entire zone quest, I can say I'm really impressed. I'll give some fairly light spoilers, but nothing serious because I know there are plenty of people who haven't played it yet. Okay, so everyone you care about dies. I'm totally kidding. This was a storyline that was definitely made for the solo enthusiast, and I mean that as a compliment. We have the reintroduction of many beloved characters, new dialogue options, some laughs, some heartbreaks, and a very interesting Daedric artifact that could have some implications for future Elder Scrolls games. The best part? That was only Act 1. We still have the other half of the island coming. Speaking of the island, I was also a pretty big fan of Solstice. Admittedly, I was a little worried at first because the island does seem small. And it sort of is, but also isn't. Like with some of the other smaller zones we've had, it's deceptively large. My guess would be that by the time it's revealed to us and we have both sections of the island uncovered, it will probably be about the size of Somerset. As usual, the art team popped off. It is a visual masterpiece, as most DLCs in this game tend to be. One thing I've got to mention, though, is that the delves and the public dungeon are just fantastic. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I just had so much fun when I was exploring them. They've got good bosses, they're easy to navigate but interesting to explore, and they're all so unique. I don't normally feel the need to bring up the little things like that, but I just wanted to because these were so much fun. When it comes to the new trial Ossian Cage, I actually haven't gotten to play it. As of the time of posting this video, I'll be doing a blind run of it for the first time tonight with my friends. If I have any strong opinions about it, I may make a separate video for it, but otherwise, I suspect it will be a fun trial, as usual, and I'm excited to try it. Next, let's talk sets. I've talked about the new sets in my PTS video, so I won't linger on it too long, but they're fine. I can't speak for every role, but for healing specifically, there really isn't anything we need to be on the lookout for in this patch. Recovery Convergence is pretty much the only dedicated healer set, and it's a resource set, so we can pretty much throw that out. Also, I realized in my previous video, I said that you only needed 10,000 overhealing, and it turns out it was actually 100,000, which doesn't really change my opinion of the set, but it somehow makes the set that I already didn't really care about care even less. You get the idea. Now, for set balancing, okay, pay attention healers because this part is new. Pearls of Elnafay and Pillager's Prophet got nerfed. That's right, you heard that correctly, sound the alarms. And it's not a small nerf either. These things got smacked with the nerf hammer. Pearls no longer grants you 3 ult, and instead it gives you major heroism for 1.5 seconds, granting you 3 ult. Now you may be going, well Doc, it sounds like it does the exact same thing. And you're mostly correct. The difference is, now, since Pearls grants major heroism, it no longer stacks when running it with any skills that grant major heroism, such as Trample. To some, this is okay, because I know a lot of people don't really like running Trample, but it is a nerf nonetheless. Now on to Pillagers. Oh, sweet, sweet Pillagers. This set saw a nerf which reduced the amount of ultimate you give your teammates from 5% of your ult charge all the way down to 2%. Of course, in practice, I imagine this won't be quite as bad as it seems, because thanks to subclassing, you should be getting maximum ult charge quite a bit faster. Still though, between this and Pearls, I've been seeing more and more speculation about whether or not this ulti-gen build is actually still worth running for healers. I suspect that for some groups it will be, and for others, it won't. I'd be willing to bet your optimized score pushing groups will still probably use this setup in an effort to, just maximize the DPS to the highest possible degree, whereas your progression groups might swap over to something like a barrier spam setup to help with survivability and mastering mechanics. Whichever way you slice it, I'll admit that when I first saw this in the PTS patch notes, I did not see that one coming. But next, let's talk about class balancing. So if you've seen my video covering the PTS, not much has changed, but there were a few pretty big changes that I did want to talk about. Pertaining to healers, Templar healers saw some notable changes to Luminous Shards and their Restoring Light skill line. I think even with the extended ritual change, the Mending passive buff will make Restoring Light a solid choice for many healer builds. Nightblade healers saw a good amount of changes, most notably the change to the Catalyst passive that will allow the Siphoning skill line to generate even more ultimate than it already does. Dragon Knight healers really didn't see many changes that will impact healing. I think DK tanks probably saw more of an impact from this patch than the healers did. Sorcerer healers saw some major changes to all of their skill lines, but most notably the Daedric summoning skill line. While a couple of the changes from the PTS were walked back a little bit, pretty much everything though is still almost exactly the same. Warden healers saw pretty substantial buffs. While Animal Companions isn't really used by healers, it's certainly not bad for solo builds. The green balance buffs will make that skill line even stronger and more required than it already is. So, I'd get to leveling green balance if you haven't already. Necromancer healers saw some changes, but the ultimate generation from Necros weren't really touched at all, so I think most people won't notice too much of a difference. And finally, Arcanist healers saw mostly buffs with one massive nerf to the Arcanist domain skill. This nerf definitely changed up some team comps a bit, but Curative Runeforms remains a pretty solid skill line to bring in a lot of healing builds. Overall, I'd say healers mostly saw buffs across the board, with some notable nerfs. I think no matter what your base class is, or what your favorite subclass combo is, there's a good chance something about your build probably got a little stronger. And hey, as a Templar main, I am definitely not complaining. And finally, let's talk about subclassing. Oh boy, the big bad subclassing has arrived. How are we feeling? Because personally, I'm having a blast with it. For those that don't know, subclassing is a system where a level 50 character can trade out one or two of their class skill lines for skill lines of another class. You have to maintain at least one skill line from your base class at all times. You can't have more than one skill line of a different class, and each of these skills you acquire costs double the skill point. The progression you make with subclasses is account-wide, but it does take a little bit longer to get them leveled. You can't swap these skills on the fly, meaning you will need to use a skill respec shrine or scroll, but you can save them to armory builds. I don't think you have to like subclassing, but I think a lot of the arguments I've seen against it are issues that have already existed, such as poor PvP balancing and tight metas. Look back at pretty much any update in ESO history, and there's a good chance that there is a singular meta for each role that people follow extremely tightly at the very high end of content. The meta will always exist, and it will usually be a class and a build that many people don't enjoy using or just don't want to make another character for. If you chose not to follow it before, nothing's changed. You don't have to follow it now. Pure classes will be at a disadvantage, yes, but I'd bet that there isn't a single piece of content in the game that a pure class cannot work in, including PvP. Another common thing I've seen is class identity. I'm not going to say anything about classes in single-player Elder Scrolls games, and I'm not going to mention that most of your skills come from non-class lines anyway. Instead, I'm going to politely suggest that maybe some people are looking at classes a little too narrowly. Just because your Templar has a Warden skill line doesn't make them less of a Templar. in the same way that a nature domain cleric from D&D isn't less of a cleric. Or, if my Nightblade takes a sorcerer skill line, it doesn't make them less of a Nightblade in the same way that an arcane trickster rogue from D&D isn't less of a rogue. Perhaps, instead of looking at subclassing as taking away from your class identity, perhaps there's a way it could give depth to your class identity instead. Finally, the last thing that I'll say is that I think subclassing does wonders for my off-meta enjoyers. Before, if you picked an off-meta class, you were stuck with those class skills, and that could put you at a significant disadvantage if your chosen class wasn't strong in your favorite role. Now, if you chose to interact with subclassing, you have one off-meta skill line at worst, meaning many more classes and many more people now have an opportunity to participate in group content that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to do before. I'll be the first to admit, I hate managing alts, I really do. And the idea that I'm going to get to put a lot more time and focus onto my main character again is a prospect that really excites me. Again, if you're someone who doesn't like subclassing for whatever reason, I completely respect your opinion. Me personally, though, I can't wait to see what sorts of builds people come up with. And I think that about covers it. There were some other changes, of course, such as new furnishing, styles, etc. One thing I forgot to mention, though, is that the new green champion point tree cost adjustments happened. You can see on screen now that certain things will cost less champion points to reach max level, and they even included a new perk to help you level your skill lines faster. I'll link the patch notes in the description if you want to check it out. Otherwise, though, I hope you enjoyed the video and found it useful. Remember that these are just my opinions, and you're allowed to have opinions that are different than mine. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the link below to follow me on stuff and join my Discord server. I'd also like to take a moment to thank my Patreon supporters Dylan Stewart and Sharney Lee, as well as my YouTube members Austin Anderson, Durgy, and Insert Username. Thank you guys for your continued support, and I sincerely appreciate y'all. I think all I've got left to say is that I've been Doc. Take care of yourselves, be good to others, don't forget to put some points into that new green CP perk, and I will catch y'all in the next one.